And
I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you again, Sherry, for doing this.
Absolutely. So welcome to students. Thank you so much for attending today. Today I'm going to present on prepping for your elevator pitch, a little bit about resumes, and then your future online interviews that all of you will successfully obtain at the Cybersecurity Fair on the 28th. So thanks again to everyone for inviting me. My email is listed here, crpeters@cpp.edu. And I'm liaison to the College of Business here at Cal Poly Pomona. So just excited. So away we go. I have a lot of information for students. So again, we're going to talk about the elevator pitch, give you a great example, discuss resumes again, and then online interviews. So how do you prepare as a student, right? At this point in time, students need to prepare for all options. Make sure you're looking at job descriptions, make sure you have that accurate sense of what you can offer the employer and your skills, but also be aware of what you don't yet possess and how you can acquire that. There are different options. I know for the cybersecurity fair, it will be remote. However, there are some employers who have returned in person and are offering in-person interviews. There are those that are also conducting phone interviews. So every option, you need to be prepared ahead of time. So let's talk about that 60-second commercial about you, right? Your ultimate goal in this commercial is to create a positive and lasting impression in a brief amount of time. And that can be really difficult. We all have so much to say. Maybe we're not sure about what we should bring up. One rule of thumb I always mention to students, don't overshare. Don't give them information that they may not want to hear. Don't give them what you don't have, only give them what you do have. Preview your list of organizations ahead of time so you know who you're meeting with or in what industry that you're looking into. And you need to plan a strategy for those companies that you want to speak to, even if it's virtually. Who are those target employers? Who are those 5 or 6 employers? Or who are those 10 employers? Rank them for yourself. It's very important so you know what that strategy is. Maybe you attend the first employer and they're your last on your top 5 list. That's okay. Maybe you're preparing. Maybe you will have an option with them, but maybe your number 1 employer, that's the one you go to last. But research your employers. You need to have current facts about those employers, products or services, other employers that they've acquired lately. That's all very important. If you're not sure about an organization, you have not researched, guarantee they're going to ask a question and you won't know what to say. So all of this should be part of that 60-second commercial. And again, if they do have job descriptions available and it's pertinent to your major, you need to know what those requirements are. What are those specifics and what can you talk about in your 60-second commercial? So develop that introduction. I know that for students, it's been particularly difficult when you're not in front of an individual. You're not putting your hand out. You're not shaking the hand. You're not looking them in the eye because everything is virtual. But you still want to make sure that you say hello to them. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you virtually at this fair. Thanks for attending the event today. I appreciate your time. I'm really excited to be here. Many, many different ways you can open, but hello might be the first word that you utilize, right? Hi, I'm Tom, or I'm Mary, or whomever. Wait for the response from that recruiter virtually. Wait for what they say next. They may say, great, nice to meet you. And there might be silence, right? What do? I feel awkward. jump into your commercial, right? I'm currently a junior here at Cal Poly. I'm majoring in computer systems. I work part-time on campus right now as an IT assistant. Again, what can you bring to the table that gets that employer excited about you? Now, being a junior status or majoring in computer systems or even working part-time, maybe that's not what they're looking for. But maybe this next sentence is, right? The role has enhanced my communication or my management and or my IT skills. That's a little bit different. Maybe you've had an internship somewhere. You can talk about that. Maybe you haven't. That's okay. Maybe you volunteered. Maybe some of you work on your own for free and you help people set up their computers at home. Think about what that entails. From inception to completion, exactly what are you doing to help those individuals, right? People who are not computer savvy. Maybe that's something you could discuss with them. But also, if you know something about the company, as in this example, it talks about the company plans for business growth, and it says where. Quick 20, 30 seconds, right? You wait for the employer then to respond. Oh, I didn't even know that about my company. Where did you hear about that? Well, then you can go into a little bit more detail and talk about it. Maybe the next part of your introduction, once there's that back and forth, you can discuss the potential internship or the potential position. I noticed on your website that you have 56 opportunities in all of these areas for your organization. I'm looking for my first professional position as an intern. The internship that I found on your website showcases this, and ask the questions. Then you're into that introduction. Brief, to the point, but you're determined to potentially interview for an upcoming internship role or a full-time role. But please practice your introduction with your friends, with your colleagues, your classmates, one of us in the Career Center, just so it sounds conversational and not necessarily rehearsed. And that can be really, really difficult for students. I understand that. But do your best and practice. Record yourself on your mobile device. Maybe that'll be helpful to you. So now we're going to jump on to resumes real quick. If we look at this phrase here, employers devote an average of 15 to 30 seconds reading your resume. That's not a lot of time. So the information that is on your resume needs to really be clear and concise, right to the point, and be very effective. And I would say for most of you in your field, employers are using scannable software to go through resumes. Keywords, key terms are very important, and not utilizing templates, even more important, particularly for your industry. Again, 15 to 30 seconds is not a lot of time, so put the most important information about the field toward the top of your resume and not at the bottom of the resume. But let's look at these really critical essentials that are needed on a resume, particularly in this COVID area. Make sure that your resume is pleasing to the eye, that it's not necessarily scattered, or that, again, you're using a template with 9 different boxes on the resume. That is not effective. Make sure, again, that it reads easily left to right, especially if they're using the Scanware system. Use industry keywords and or buzzwords that are useful. Those types of keywords that are acquired in classwork or that you utilize for academic projects or in the world of work if you're working now. Please stand out on your resume. Everyone is different. Everyone brings something different on their resume. Again, don't use templates. Update or write a resume summary or goal. Maybe that's something a few of you have on your resume. That's terrific. You're discussing that knowledge that you have, perhaps that work that you've completed, or utilize a goal rather than an objective. What is your goal? To obtain that internship for XYZ organization. Maybe it's summer 2022. Be as specific as you can with that goal. Explain impact on your resume as it relates to you and the field, the impact you've had. How did those courses impact your knowledge? How did that position impact you so you acquired a leadership role? Not simply that you did sales, but what type of sales and how much higher were those sales? Were you recognized for being #1 in the sales division? Again, it's that impact that employers are looking for. And please upload your resume on Handshake for those that are Cal Poly Pomona students or alum. Very effective. Employers, if you have a public profile, they're able to review those resumes and perhaps send you emails asking you to come in for interviews. As best as you can, I do realize for career fairs, you're not necessarily able to really develop that resume for specific jobs oftentimes, but if you can, please do so. It shows the employer that you've taken the time to read their job description, as well as look through their website, or that you've acquired that job description or the job announcement by way of a staff or faculty member. Again, error-free on these resumes. Please be mindful of the mistakes. Employers are looking for individuals that are able to communicate effectively on the resume. Misspelled words, that's a no-no. So make sure you have someone else look at your resume and we can spot those errors if you have any. If you have job offers, this is something else that I want to mention. A lot of students will add other job offers onto the resume. I wouldn't recommend that, but keep searching for those jobs, right? Even if you have a potential job offer from an employer and you're still attending this event, that's great. You should do that. Keep searching for jobs so you can find the best one for yourself. And then if you think about it, 70 to 85% of jobs are found through networking and personal relationships. And these are online opportunities. So anyone attending your cyber event on the 28th, that's great. You're going to be looking at those potential job opportunities. And networking with individuals is so critical. So I mentioned no template. So I wanted to just briefly showcase 4 different templates. These are utilized so often by students on the campus. Please do not use these templates, right? They're ineffective. They're boxes, they're columns, not going to work. In fact, even for this contact lower right side, we see different icons for a phone and for a text and for email and for a website. They're not needed and they might not get through that ScanMore system. So again, use just basic Word document or Google and type it in for yourself so you're able to free flow add information to make you stand out. And I would not put a photo on a resume. Here's an example, albeit it's a little bit grainy here, but I just wanted to simply showcase if you have specific experience, even though the dates might be different time periods, if it's specific to the IT world, you may want to put that toward the top of your resume. And then, as in this example, there's work experience at the bottom because it's outside of this example for marketing. So for yourself, again, some of you may be separating specific experience in the IT world versus additional experience at a restaurant or something like that. Again, it's not necessarily the look of this as much as it is the sections that I wanted to point out. But it is a fairly good looking resume because they have everything aligned together. So just something to keep in mind. Your education. For most of you at Cal Poly, you're working on your Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. For anyone at a different school, maybe it's that Associate of Science. Now, whether you use an emphasis, focus, major, however you write that out, just be as specific as possible. More often than not, for Cal Poly students, you're going to add your graduation date. You're closer to completing that degree. You didn't necessarily just start this fall. But if you have, you can also add that date and maybe a projected end date if you want to. For most students, any GPA that's 3.0 or higher should be added to the resume. It shows that you have a solid work ethic for your education and you're really looking at that advanced career in CIS, Computer Info Systems. If you've transferred and you obtained an Associate of Science or an Associate of Art or multiple degrees or credentials, certifications, a lot of you are working on many different things, you can add that to the resume. But if you're at Cal Poly Pomona, please use the official name. Please utilize that first, and then underneath you'll add your additional education and credentials. Now, for some of you, you've taken Coursera, you've done lots of different education programs, you can definitely add that information to the resume. Even if it's current or if it happened in the past, I think it's important to add, showcase everything that you have to offer. There's additional sections on resumes, though, that you can add. Volunteer activities on or off campus. Internships, co-ops, maybe for some of you, you've completed one this past year. Projects that are directly or maybe a little bit indirectly related to the field. Your computer skills, I would say for all of you, it's more than Microsoft, but what are those notable computer skills that are very important for your industry? Have you completed, again, those certifications or any specialized training? You may want to notate that in a different section. Memberships, if you belong to MISA or SWIFT or FAST or anything like that, maybe you're part of LBSA. Again, what showcases you and what's going to be important? If you're part of the leadership team, that goes a long way as well. So you can notate that. I would say that recently I've been noticing students are adding leadership responsibilities if they're on the e-board for a club. That's wonderful. Give that information that's useful in a concise manner. Some of you, maybe you're involved with off-campus club activities as well. That can be added to resume. Military experience, entrepreneur activities, honors or awards, which includes scholarships. Very important to add that to the resume. Relevant coursework, certifications, again, can complement your resume. And languages, do you read a different language? Do you write a different language? And do you speak a different language? Rather than just putting one language and listed, English and Spanish, for example, right? What is my skill level for Spanish? English is understood. You're at community college or at a university. But what other language skills and how well do you read? Are you completely fluent in speaking? So tell them a little bit more rather than just putting language Spanish or language Tagalog or language Mandarin. How have you acquired and how proficient are you? That's what they want to see on that resume. So jumping to that sample academic projects, this can help you to really create a robust resume. If you've completed a project even if it's a group or a team project. It can take your resume to the next level and complement skills that you've acquired while in class or together with other people. This can be an entrepreneurial activity as well. You want to make sure that you add the experience, but that you're describing it with action words. And if it is a team project, please make sure that you notify your team members that you will be adding it to your resume. You don't need to add all the names, but make them aware of that. And then also notate if it is a team project. That's very important. And so these two samples, more often than not, students utilize sample 1, but sample 2, I think, can be very well utilized, especially in your field. And then I also wanted to make mention, I'm not sure about the community colleges, but at Cal Poly Pomona, we do have LinkedIn Learning certificates that you can acquire. Most of you have access to LinkedIn, and once you log into Cal Poly Pomona, you sign in for your email, what have you, you can click on to the LinkedIn Learning icon once you're in your LinkedIn account and take different courses. Now, again, they're not specific to computer info systems, but there are different courses that are most liked on LinkedIn Learning, or those that you can learn within 30 minutes. And you could add a few of these. I wouldn't add 25, but you may want to look at a few of them in your area and develop some additional skills. Again, the time frames are located on most of the icons before you click onto it. And wherever you stop, you can open it back up and then continue on. There are some abstracts. There's some really good, useful information. So again, if you don't have lots of experience, but you want to add something that can be useful, LinkedIn Learning, again, is an option for Cal Poly Pomona students, and perhaps for the other colleges as well. Just to make mention, we do have some additional virtual events through Handshake, such as career fairs, lots of information sessions from a wide variety of employers, including Esri, that will be coming on November 4th. We have interviews, albeit they're virtual interviews, but you can still sign up utilizing Handshake. And we do have additional workshops available to you. But one area I did want to mention is Big Interview, which now ties into interviewing virtually. We have an online tool for students called Big Interview, and this provides students the opportunity to practice interviewing. All Cal Poly students have access, again, if you go through my CPP, you'll find Big Interview there. Can log into the Career Center, click on to Big Interview under the Students section, and you can practice general questions. You can practice industry-specific questions. You can practice competency sets of questions, as well as governmental agency questions. They are all pre-recorded interviews, and you can utilize this online tool 24/7. Many of these practice interviews, you're not required to record yourself and to send to anyone. I always suggest to students, just listen to those questions. It's like playing a musical instrument. If you haven't picked up an instrument in quite some time, it's very difficult to pick it up and just play something perfectly. You need to practice. And for all of us, including myself, I don't sit through interviews once a week. So practicing, spending 30 minutes listening to the type of questions that are going to be asked can be useful. In these modules, though, you're able to find tips for each of the practice interviews under the general and under the industry areas, as well as competency. I would spend, again, about 30 minutes practicing listening to those questions and finding out how you can answer those questions. So very underutilized tool, but very, very useful tool for students. And the general questions, if you look at the very first one that says, tell me about yourself, there's really good tips, and that can help you to formulate and also to practice your 1-minute commercial. So it ties back to that introduction about yourself with employers. Additionally, under the Career Center, under that student alumni resources and interviewing, you'll be able to log into your big interview account using your Cal Poly Pomona login credentials. But we have additional resources, additional PDFs that provide you some general information about career day, behavioral interview questions, and then those standard interviewing questions as well. And there is a video for an interview specific workshop, and all students have access. You don't need to be a Cal Poly student to click on to the PDFs. That's available to you. So let's talk about virtual interviewing. And on this page, I didn't notice until yesterday when I was reviewing this, the individual that is being interviewed is not dressed completely appropriately. So make sure that you test your technology ahead of time. Make sure you update your login or your username for whatever device and information you're using, and be on time. Please do not be late for your virtual interviews. Again, some additional tips: do a trial run, maybe ask a friend, hey, I want to test out my technology, make sure everything's working. If you're going to utilize your headset, make sure your microphone, everything's in working order. The ideal background is one that is tidy and distraction-free, very quiet and well lit. If you know that your neighbor's dog is going to be barking, maybe close your window ahead of time. And dress professionally from head to toe. Again, you might be in jeans or you might be in khakis or something like that. That's fine. But you also want to be mindful if there's an issue and you need to stand, move, close a window, and you're dressed like this, that's not going to go over well. So you're better prepared if you're dressed completely professionally and ready to go. And as you've probably seen during this workshop presentation, I'm an individual that likes to move my hands up and down, but that can be very distracting to individuals. So just be mindful of that when you are interviewing online. So we're going to look at the non-optimal versus the optimal webcam setup. Again, dressing for success will be so useful to you. Limit your distractions. I'm not sure what your backgrounds are. I've seen lots of different backgrounds meeting with students. Just be very conscientious about where those or what those distractions are. Communicate with those people that are around you, family members and so forth, especially if it's an organization you truly want to work for. Make sure that the lighting's in front of you and not behind you, because that can be really difficult for the recruiter to view you. Turn all the notifications off. I know for myself, when I meet with students, I always turn the inbox on Microsoft to mute so I don't hear the dinging. That's a distraction to me, and it also may be a distraction to others. So again, your body language, nodding, asking clarifying questions, maybe having a notebook as I do here in front of me, maybe with some real brief notes can be useful, but keep your eye contact. Even for myself, I notice when I help students that I need to move the Zoom box with the student in front and toward the top, closer to the camera rather than on the side. So then I'm looking at, such as this way, where I'm looking to the right, and that's where the student is, but they're viewing the side of me and not in front. So make sure your web camera is right above eye level. And again, that you don't have too many lights. And clip lights can be useful. Oftentimes, a ring light can be useful for individuals. And think about how far away you're sitting from your camera and or your computer. Do you have access to logging in without needing to move left or right, moving up and down? And then also take a look again at that microphone. How does it look? Take a look at yourself before you meet with the individuals. I would also mention to students that if you sit closer to the edge of your chair rather than all the way back in your chair, that just seems to give you a sense for sitting up and making sure that you can vocalize properly with the employer that you're speaking with. So just quite a number of pointers, a lot to think about, but web camera, make sure it's working. And I definitely would say if you're interviewing, please turn your web camera on when you're meeting with employers, even at the fair. It shows that professionalism. So what do they interview for? So on the right, we're noticing there's a photo here with 3 individuals interviewing one person across a rather large table. So we know for most employers that's still not happening yet. But why do they interview you? They're assessing you, right? They've looked at the resume, reviewed the resume, and there are key attributes on the resume that they liked, and they just want to ask follow-up questions. They want to assess you as an individual and your personality, your communication skills. Are you able to communicate effectively? Your appearance. That's why it's critical to dress up for career fairs as well as for your interviews. But they're assessing whether or not you're going to be a good fit for the team at that organization. And lastly, not that it's not important, but do you have the abilities to complete the job? They've seen some information on that resume, but they just want to, again, ask a few follow-up questions to make sure that you have those abilities. So what do you need to do ahead of time? You need to research the job and the company, what they have to offer. You need to know your own qualifications, your own personal traits, and your characteristics. They may ask those questions, and we'll get to that in a couple of slides. Review your education. Students forget what type of projects they've completed, whether or not in class or maybe something on their own. What are those classes that are really, really useful, or which ones have helped you along the way? What sort of labs have you completed? Can you utilize those for examples? You need to reflect and review that education. It's so important. Oftentimes students will say, well, I only have one class where I had a team project, but I do everything on my own. Can I use that for answering 3 or 4 questions? So I'll turn that over to all of you. Do you think that's a great idea to use one example 4 times? I would say no. And that's why you need to reflect and really think back on those projects. Maybe you worked on one project for the entire semester. That's great. Utilize different portions of it to answer critical questions, but think about those other courses and what you have to offer, or think about those work experiences and how those can directly or indirectly help to answer example questions. And once again, utilize Big Interview if you're a Cal Poly student. If not, practice, practice, practice. So here are those standard or those traditional questions. Tell us about yourself. Again, it goes back to that introduction, right? That 1-minute commercial about yourself. Don't overshare. Just give them enough information where they're excited to ask then why you're interested in that position. Only you're going to know why you're interested. It's more than, oh, well, I'm just looking for a job. There really should be more to that answer. Well, your organization offers this, or I completed an internship in this field, and your organization provides that entry-level position. And I'm really excited because your company offers this. Tell them really, truly why you're interested. And what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? These can be difficult sometimes to answer, right? Weakness has been changed a little bit into an area for improvement. But what are those strengths? If you were to say to an employer, well, I think one of my strengths is that I can communicate effectively. Do you think, or do you know, right? Maybe better use would be, one of my strengths includes communicating effectively. I've completed a course in, and this is what I learned. Or I communicate effectively because I've been really utilized as an interim lead at XYZ organization. And I interface with customers every day. Great, you're telling the employer a little bit more about that strength, not detail oriented, and then you leave it at that. We want to know, the employer wants to know how you're detail oriented. And then an area for improvement, again, weakness perhaps, maybe you're an individual who is shy, right? I'm approachable, but I am reserved, right? Maybe not shy, but maybe reserved. But tell the employer how you're coming out of that. I've realized that being reserved can be useful at times. I'm usually thinking, but what I've done to work on that is become a team lead for 3 of my projects so far at Cal Poly Pomona. Tell them how you're working on it. That's what they want to hear. Another standard question seems to be going around quite a bit. Why might you be the best candidate for this position? You better know all about that position that you've applied to, and you better know why you are the most ideal individual. I believe I'm the best candidate because I possess this, I've completed this, and I see myself moving further and further into this realm for XYZ job. Tell them why. Think about how you're going to answer those questions. Now, on the other side of things, they ask the STAR questions, or those behavioral questions, which can be really difficult to answer. But basically, a STAR question looks at your past experiences, whether that's in school or at work, previous employment, maybe for some of you, military as well. Think about STAR. And for some students, they put a little star right next to their camera so they can remember, what situation have I been in? What task or which tasks have I completed? What were my own actions or my approach to the situation? And what were those results? Think about, again, 3 or 4 different situations and past experiences that you can recall. Maybe write a couple of notes for yourself that you can answer when they ask those questions. Like, tell me about a time when you had an issue with a coworker. What did you do? Sometimes students say, I don't have an answer. I've not ever worked. That's okay. There's 2 ways that you can go about answering that question. I've not been in that situation, but if I were, this is what I would do. And then go through the STAR. If I were in this situation where this happened, these are the tasks that we would potentially be assigned. This would be my approach to this situation, in the hopes that the results would be this, this, and this. Or I've not yet been in the world of work. However, for a class, when I was a team lead for this class and for this project, we were assigned to complete this and then talk about the approach and your results. The reason why employers ask these behavioral questions is because our past behavior is the best predictor of our future performance, and it focuses on your ability to perform the job that you're applying to, and it provides them information about specific job requirements that they're looking for. At the end of the interview, there's a closing summary, and perhaps this is where the employer would say, we're interviewing many applicants for this position. Please tell us why you might be one of the best candidates. Your answer really needs to be a summary that encompasses the best highlights of your education, your experience, your qualities, and your interest for the position. Not necessarily reading from your resume, not necessarily just going through what you answered for different questions, but really think about it. You know, I've enjoyed my time at Cal Poly Pomona, or I've enjoyed my time at Fullerton College in this field, learning this, my experience with XYZ. I believe my ability to communicate effectively makes me one of the best candidates because I've had experience in, tell them that. And I am interested in this role for the organization name and the position. I really appreciate the time, and you know, I hope to move along in the process, and I'm really excited about what I can bring to the table. So close that summary out and really think about that as you go through preparing for your career fair. But you also want to think about questions at the end of the interview. You need to sell yourself at the end of the interview. One of the most generic questions that are asked by individuals is, well, what would I be doing here day to day? Well, maybe the employer will tell you, but the employer might also be thinking, why didn't you read the job description? So that's something to keep in mind. Ask some thorough questions that truly show that you have an interest in the organization and show that you're excited about that. What would make the new staff member successful on day one? That shows that you're taking that initiative to find out what you can prepare for if you're selected, but also maybe what you already possess that's going to make you successful in the role. Maybe you want to ask about ongoing training opportunities. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe ask those recruiters, what do you like most about working for whatever the company name is? Do that homework, right? Understand more about the organization by asking solid questions at that end of the interview. And you notice there are 3 examples. I would ask a minimum of 3 questions at the end of the interview. And maybe you have 5 or 6 questions. I wouldn't do more than that unless they didn't give you any information about the position. Maybe they were restricted for whatever reason. But try and ask very well thought out questions because you're interviewing the employer just as much as they are interviewing you. The Career Center has lots of example questions in our career guide. Again, if you go to cpp.edu/career, on the left navigation bar, you'll see career guide, and that information is there for Cal Poly and non-Cal Poly students to view. It's a PDF. So at the very end, right, maybe there's a couple more questions that an employer recruiter might ask you, and you can answer those then. Maybe they're going to clarify what the next steps are for the interview. But again, show that interest, right? Whether or not you're going to take that role, just let them know that you enjoy the interview and you're excited, again, about those opportunities or the position. ask for the contact information to send up a follow-up if that's possible. Sometimes they're not receptive to that. Thank whoever is on that call or on that Zoom and send a thank you. Now I realize right now, nearly everything is via email, but we also have thank you examples through that career guide as well. One thing I will say for employers, if you know the address or if you know the recruiter's name and you can handwrite a thank you and put it in the US mail, that oftentimes take you to the next level, especially if you may not be that first candidate. Let's say you're tied, that would set you apart. I would still send the thank you via email within 24 hours, but follow up with that thank you. You never know, it might get you that opportunity. And here's the reality, right? There might be 25 people applying to a role. They narrow it down to 5. You get to your second round, maybe a third round of interview, and you're not selected. Well, take a look at these 3 areas. What was your communication style? Maybe you did pretty well, but you could have excelled in just one area. So prepare ahead of time. Body language, right? As I mentioned earlier, when you're meeting with recruiters, are you sitting closer to the edge of the chair or are you not? And if you're not, that plays a role with interviews in person, but also virtually. Are you engaged? Are you raising your eyebrows when they ask a question? Are you smiling, right? Maybe they're wearing a mask. Maybe you're not required to wear a mask because you're virtual, but for all purposes, do the best you can. Again, don't be moving your arms around up and down like I tried not to for the workshop here. But what is that body language? Are you moving in because you're excited about those questions or excited about the opportunity? And what attitude are you bringing? You may be very tired because you're studying. Maybe you've got a lot on your plate. Maybe you have an exam coming up. Maybe your mind is somewhere else. But you've got to be on. You've got to bring that positive attitude. This is my job. I want to get it. I'm excited about it. Tell yourself that story. Prepare so you're ready. So the interview goes in a positive direction for you and you're asked to join that organization. But think about these 3 areas. Maybe some of you have interviewed before and you haven't received the position. Maybe one of these 3 areas could be the reason why. But the Career Center can help you with that as well. And I'm sure at the community college, you have career counselors who can also help you too. Did want to mention for the Cal Poly Pomona students that we do host drop-ins. And there's an error on the screen. It's from 1 to 3, Monday through Friday. You can schedule through Zoom or schedule a virtual drop-in from 1 to 3, Monday through Friday. We have different staff members who are available, but you can also come into the Career Center for drop-ins from 1 to 3, Monday through Friday. If you'd like to schedule a counseling appointment, you'll utilize CPP Connect, and we have various appointment times from 8 until 5 p.m. I am available to make after-hour appointments if we can get something scheduled. You can certainly email me personally. I'm happy to help. And my email address is listed here for Cal Poly Pomona students. So with the remaining couple of minutes, if anyone has any questions and would like to pop them in the chat, I'm happy to answer those if I have the answer to your question.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just want to say thank you so much for this whole entire workshop presentation. It has been very helpful for me as I'm actually preparing for the Cybersecurity Awareness Fair Job Fair. But the question I have is, how many pages should I have my resume? I understand everything is virtual. Should we have a 1 page or should we have it at 2 pages?
Most students have a 1 page, but that if you have really solid experience, and you can fill out a second page, fine, that's up to you. And maybe for some governmental agencies, they want to have a much longer, very, very, very detailed resume. So depending on the industry and what you plan to do. But keep in mind that the critical information for the resume should be on page 1. And if they're only spending 15 to 30 seconds reviewing it, and you're spending 7 hours putting a resume together because you want to complete 2 pages, and it's for a company that really doesn't need 2 pages, then again, you may want to be really, really careful about what you're adding to that resume. Give them real, just highlights and not real detailed. Now, that's going to be everything except for government. If it's a government agency, it's going to be more detailed, and it might wind up being three or 4 pages because they want details. But if it's, you know, Google, or if it's a different organization like that, and you're able to highlight things on 1 page, then maybe there's stuff they might want to ask you about. So you pique their interest, but you don't overshare. I know that's not necessarily answering your question, but hopefully it gives you a little bit more context.
Of course. And should we include a cover letter?
You know, for career fairs, if you know the recruiter's name and you have the company information, you can certainly add that cover letter. Most often for a career fair, students don't have that opportunity to know ahead of time who is there, but I would still create one in the hopes that you do get an interview, a second interview, more than just an intro. But if you really want that job, spend the time and put that cover letter together and have it available for the employer.
Perfect. And last question. You did go over scannable resumes and uploading our resume to Handshake. Should we have a scannable resume uploaded to Handshake, or what kind of resume should we upload onto Handshake?
That actually has not ever been asked of me before. Let's see, what would be best? Most employers that use Handshake are looking themselves. They're not using an ATS system. So I would say a regular resume is okay.
Thank you very much for your answers. This has actually helped me out so much. I appreciate it. Good,
happy to help. Well, that's my hour. Chris, anything that I missed, or do you want this in PDF format as well? I'm happy to do that.
Well, if you want to give me the PDF, I did have one last question though. Just in general, what's the biggest mistake that students normally make in a like career fair type setting? You know, because typically you have like a line of people. So I guess the question is, you know, you're in that kind of herd mentality and they're trying to get through the queues as fast as they can. So, you know, what can a student do not to quickly eliminate themselves?
If you don't know you, and if you don't have 2 or 3 key attributes that you speak of, okay, that's gonna, you know, if you just, what do you have to offer? What? Research, I can offer these 3 things. I'm excited, this is my degree, this is what I'm working on, and be really conscientious of that. And they know it, and you bring your confidence with you, that will set you apart.
Okay. Thank you again very much. And I will get this posted for everybody, and have a wonderful day.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.